Back, Jenny Hermoso says Monday's Spanish women's team squad announcement is proof that, quotes, nothing has changed at the Spanish Football Federation, the RFEF, despite the installation of a new president and new women's head coach in the wake of the Women's World Cup final. 20 of the 39 players who'd said they were boycotting the national side until further changes were made because they didn't yet feel in a safe place were still named by new coach Montse Tomé for the upcoming games against Sweden and Switzerland, and now face sanctions, including the suspension of their federation licence if they don't report for duty. Most of Spain's World Cup winning squad are amongst those selected, with new coach Tomé telling the media she'd spoken to the players named, but she wouldn't reveal what she'd discussed with them. But the players quickly responded with a statement via Players Association FootPro, reiterating their boycott over concerns about safety, referring to the structural changes they've called for and expressing their regret that they've again been put in a position they never wanted to be in, saying they're studying the possible legal consequences to which they have now been exposed by the RFEF. Those legal consequences relate to the current law of sport in Spain, with Article 104 stating the lack of attendance without justification to call-ups of national sporting teams, as well as not being at the disposition of national teams of the athletes who have been designated to form part of said call-ups, is a very serious offence. Punishment for these very serious offences, as detailed by RFEF disciplinary code, can include a fine of between €3,000 to €30,051 and disqualification from holding positions in the federative bodies, or the suspension or confiscation of their licence for a period of 2 to 5 years. And the player at the centre of the fallout of the unsolicited kiss at the World Cup final, Jenny Hermoso, who wasn't named in the squad, has reacted with her own statement directed at the actions of the Spanish Federation, saying the people who now ask us to trust them are the same ones who today disclosed the list of players who have asked not to be called up. The players are certain that this is yet another strategy of division and manipulation to intimidate and threaten us with legal repercussion and economic sanctions. It is yet more irrefutable proof that shows that even today, nothing has changed. Well, for more, I'm delighted to say we are joined in the studio by sports law barrister Sam Cuthbert, who practices at Outer Temple Chambers. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, there is a lot here, isn't there? I mean, I suppose my first question, how surprised are you as how this has played out?
Well, I think not at all, really. The Spanish Football Federation have shown themselves to be devoid of good judgment a number of times over the past few weeks. We, of course, had the Rubiales circus over the kiss, and then they were back and forth over the position that they had taken. Eventually, obviously, he stepped down. We now find ourselves looking at another potential scandal in the form of calling up these players who are boycotting for legitimate and reasonable reasons. And it's clear that the Spanish Football Federation seem to have taken leave of their senses once more. And so I don't find it at all surprising, I think, in answer to your question.
And we have seen this morning, despite putting their names to the letter, saying they were going on strike, a number of the players who have been reporting for duty at the team hotel, the likes of Olga Carmona and Misa Rodriguez. We haven't yet been able to confirm the numbers, but we are here talking about FIFA statutes. We're talking about Spanish sports law. We are talking about RFEF regulations and rules. What realistic chance of punishment do you think there is?
Well, the RFEF, through a spokesperson, have already said that they're looking for some sort of mediated agreement which won't require sanction being brought. It would, of course, be dreadful from an optical perspective for these players who, as I say, are boycotting for legitimate and reasonable reasons, i.e. that they want structural change in a federation where they don't feel safe going to work. The optics would be awful if they were sanctioned for that boycott taking place. So, as I say, I'm not surprised. This is another classic example of the RFEF taking leave of their senses.
What advice would you be giving to the players in this situation? They have raised concerns, they say, and there is evidence that they have raised their concerns a number of different formats over a significant period of time, yet this is still playing out.
Well, the FIFA and the UEFA codes don't provide that there's any requirement to play for the country. So what we're dealing with is solely the Spanish sports law angle. And there's a long history of footballers and other sports people having to take a stand in order to achieve change. My view is that this is a legitimate and reasonable position they're taking, and ultimately they need to stick to their guns. If any change is to be made, they need to ensure that they are adhering to the letter of the boycott and resisting these calls.
There are, though, UEFA rules and regulations and punishments in place if Spain are unable to field a side. From a human rights perspective and an ethical judgment, do they need to take some responsibility? Because are we saying we're supporting a European governing body almost forcing players who are raising concerns about their safety to represent a country?
Well, I think the first point is that it's very unlikely you find yourself in a situation where a national team, particularly a national team who's just won the World Cup, is unable to field a side. There will be always 11 people happy to take to the field. As far as the human rights angle goes, it may be that there is a tension between right to withhold labour, right to go on strike, and of course, right to play for one's country. There may be some tension in that. But ultimately, my sense is that this is a classic case of a football team having to take a stand in order to achieve change. And that if they stick to their guns, I wouldn't be surprised if the RFEF do change tack once more, as they have done previously with the Rubiales case.
There is a long way still to go. There are a lot of different legal avenues being explored. But Sam Cuthbert, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you.